Hello, I'm Ros Atkins. Welcome to World Have Your Say. It's a programme devoted to your opinions and your experiences. And every week at this time, we're going to be live on BBC World News. Now, there's only one thing you want to talk about today. In Egypt, protesters are calling it the Day of Departure. Their opponents, though, say rather it's a day of allegiance. And if you listen to the president speaking yesterday, you get the feeling he sees today as another day in the presidential palace. But what about those of you who are watching? Do you think he should go right now? If you're online, you can get in touch on Twitter, on Facebook and on our blog. You're also welcome to phone us, to text us and to Skype us throughout the programme. And wherever you're watching BBC World News, we're live and you're very welcome to take part. Well, we're going to be speaking to some of you in Cairo, Washington and Dubai in the next few minutes about when President Mubarak should leave office. And those of you watching would like to join in online, if you go to our Facebook page now, click the like button when you get there and you can get involved. But let's begin World Have Your Say with a look at the day's main developments in this story. Huge crowds of Egyptians have gathered in central Cairo once again to call for the resignation of President Hosni Mubarak. In Tahrir, or Liberation Square, the protesters have been chanting, waving flags and singing patriotic songs as thousands more continue to join them. Pro-Mubarak supporters have been stopped from entering Tahrir Square by the army, so they're gathering in other squares in Cairo. They're calling it a day of allegiance. The president says there will be chaos if he steps down. And the protests against President Mubarak today haven't been confined to Cairo. There have also been tens of thousands of demonstrators in the port city of Alexandria. Meanwhile, in Jordan, more than 1,000 people have demonstrated in the capital, Amman, to call for political reforms in the country. The protesters, led by the opposition group the Islamic Action Front, gathered outside the Prime Minister's offices to demand changes to the country's electoral laws. And in Iran, the supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has called the uprising in Egypt a sign of Islamic awareness in the region. He described President Mubarak as a servant of Israel and of America. Well, we're going to speak to guests in Cairo and Dubai, but let's begin in Washington. We can speak to Yasser El-Shimi, who's a Middle East analyst, but also, Yasser, until very recently, you worked for the Egyptian Foreign Ministry in the United States. Tell us why you don't have that job anymore.
Well, I resigned my job as an analyst at the Egyptian embassy last week to protest the killing of peaceful demonstrators both in Cairo and in Suez. It was more of a moral decision that I took rather than any kind of political statement that I wished to send.
And when would you like your president to leave power?
When? I think he should have left power perhaps on Tuesday, January 25th, when the first sparks of the revolution started. I think that it is futile for him to try and cling on to power right now. He claims that if he leaves power, the country will be engulfed in chaos. But as a matter of fact, his decision to remain in office is the only guarantee that the country will delve into chaos.
Well, yeah, so let me introduce you to Nora, who's an Egyptian who lives in London. Nora, what's your view of Yasser's position on when President Mubarak should leave power?
Hi, Yasser. I really do think that Mubarak stepping down now without a prominent leader in place or even parties that would take over is just a really bad idea. I think he should step down. I think he should have stepped down last elections. I think he should have stepped down 4 elections ago. But I don't believe that him stepping down right now is best for the country.
Yasser?
Well, I do think it is best for the country. The voices of millions of people have been heard, and have been heard very loudly. People do not wish for him to stay in power, and unfortunately for him, if he does stay in power, the country will just witness more of the same. He may probably try and brutally crack down on the peaceful demonstrators in order to try and ensure quiet on the streets until next September. But if he, in fact, drives this revolution underground, this will be very alarming for the future of Egypt. Right now, we have a chance to enter into a democratic, peaceful transition through the president giving away his authority, perhaps to his vice president or to some presidential council that is headed by the military, to try and make sure that Egyptians can elect people who actually represent them.
We talk about the vice president. He has also reiterated the same point the president was making. Vice President Suleiman has said to hand over power now would be a mistake that would leave Egypt in chaos. We've heard from Yasser in Washington, D.C., Nora in London. Let's bring in Shahira Amin, who until a few hours ago was a journalist on state television in Egypt. Shahira, thank you very much for joining us. Tell us why you decided to leave your job. I'm afraid we can't speak to her. We'll try and get that line up in just a moment. But in the meantime, we can bring in Dr. Ibrahim Kamel, who's a businessman, also a member of Mr. Mubarak's National Democratic Party, who's also joining us from Cairo. Sir, you went on to state television a few days ago and encouraged supporters of the president out onto the streets. Why did you do that?
I did that in order to just show the world that the people demonstrating in Tahrir Square are not the majority of Egyptians, as all the foreign press is trying to claim. In fact, they are a minority, and a small minority. And I wish we were permitted from day one to show that the overwhelming silent majority, when they go out in the street, they will prove to the whole world that Egypt is not and cannot be represented by a small minority in Tahrir Square.
Yes,
sir. What would you say to Ibrahim Kamel?
Well, with all due respect, Mr. Kamel, all that the people down on the streets in Cairo are demanding is a chance to let Egyptians actually decide for themselves who truly represents them.
Yes, sir. I fully agree with the changes that have been asked for, namely the changes in the Constitution, the changes in many aspects of the political life in Egypt that would make Egypt a better democratic country. This is one story, and the insistence of some people on changing the president today is something that I absolutely reject, because this is not a call for democracy. This is a call for listening to a small mob. No way that this would be the state of affairs in Egypt.
So you're suggesting that the foreign media is misrepresenting what's happening in Cairo. Nora, till very recently you were living in Egypt. Do you agree with him that we shouldn't take the view in Tahrir Square as being representative of the whole country?
I agree with him on that respect. I believe that it's short-sighted to say we want him out now. I understand that people are emotional. People have had enough. They want him gone. It's been 30 years. It's been, 26 years too long. People just want to be done with it. And now that they've found an outlet to vent out all that anger, they're taking to the streets and they want action now. The thing is, I don't think people have let it sink in that he is leaving, that he is stepping down in September, and that until he does, there have to be changes in the Constitution. If we don't change the Constitution before he steps down, then we'll be replacing one dictator with another.
Well, Nora, let's put some of those points to Zakaria, who's joining us on the phone now. He's in Tahrir Square in Cairo. Zakaria, we have Nora here, an Egyptian, saying you've got to bear in mind the consequences if the president leaves. And at the moment, Egypt isn't ready for Mr. Mubarak to leave power.
No, hi. I just want to make it. I just left Tahrir Square just 15 minutes ago, and I'm home right now. So after I was there all morning. Anyway, but moving forward, Egypt will not fall into chaos. if President Mubarak leaves, okay, the Egyptians have shown their true mettle in the event when there was no police on the street, when there was no, when the army was there but nobody was running anything, the government had disappeared from the public eye, the police had disappeared from the public eye, there was no chaos. The Egyptians took matter in their own hand and they organized themselves and everything was run. Even the traffic, there was no traffic police, but Egyptian volunteers volunteered and they ran the traffic without the presence of the police, okay? The Egyptian people have proven that they are able-minded and ready to handle an event when the president can step down.
Okay, well, Zachary, let's put that point back to Nora. Nora, you'll have heard it well enough. He's saying, look, the evidence is in Tahrir Square. We're peaceful, we're organised, and we're taking over certain neighbourhoods in Alexandria and Cairo. Of course we can do this without the president.
I'd like to clarify one thing. I am extremely proud of the people in Tahrir Square. I'm extremely proud to be Egyptian today, and I believe we've made massive strides towards democracy in the last week. I do believe that you should question what the next step will be. What happens when every single person who thinks he can do a better job than Mubarak, who happens to be every person on the street right now, comes out and says, I will lead you for the next term, or I will lead you from now on. What happens if there's no one in charge?
You say what happens. Let's explore this further with Yasser, who until very recently worked for the Egyptian Foreign Ministry in the States. By the way, Zachary is gone. Thanks to you for speaking to us. And if any of you watching want to call us up, you'll see the numbers scrolling along the bottom of the screen with our text, Twitter, phone number, and so on. But Yasser, what is your case for the president leaving now? Why not give it a few weeks or a few months to make sure that this transition is stable, well-organised and constitutional?
Unfortunately, the situation in Egypt has developed to such an extent, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your perspective, to where people are not going to settle for anything less than the president leaving office and leaving it immediately. I mean, the Egyptians have been living under a very repressive police state for the last 30 years. For the first time, they have broken the psychological barrier of fear, and they do not want to lose the momentum of this revolution, and they think that perhaps now is better time than any. And we should bear in mind that there's absolutely no credibility on the part of the president or the regime when they say that we are going to introduce democratic reforms, or that President Mubarak is actually going to leave office.
But they do say, and the people in the squares at the moment, not Tahrir Square, other squares in Cairo, are chanting 30 years of stability, 30 years of this president. He has kept Egypt stable, hasn't he?
Well, he has kept Egypt stable, if you mean by stable that as long as you don't demand your rights, we are going to let you live. But he has denied people their freedom to assemble, their freedom of speech, the freedom to elect their representatives, and basically all of their basic freedoms. And economically, Egypt has been in a very tough position for the last 30 years.
Well, Yasser, Nora and Ibrahim, as well as all of you watching on BBC World News, do stay with us here on World Have Your Say. The BBC's World Have Your Say is a place where people come together to talk about the issues, events and experiences that matter most to them. It's live on BBC Radio, online, and now every Friday it's here on BBC World News. And while we may provide the platform, the issues that we discuss are the ones that you're already talking about. This isn't about us interviewing you, it's about you talking to people around the world.
A lot of the power of the programme comes from, say, a taxi driver in Moscow being able to talk to a farmer in Uganda about the same subject. We've taken the programme around the world to many different places. South Africa during the World Cup, we were in Beijing during the Olympics, and we were in Haiti immediately after the earthquake.
Foreign aides need to know that there has always been corruption in this country. Yeah. Make sure everything is distributed the right way.
Right people.
I'm hoping that World Have Your Say on the TV will recreate the atmosphere of the radio and the online site, a gathering together of people around the world to talk in a civilised atmosphere and share ideas and experiences.
These guys are our brothers and sisters, and they have nowhere to go. They have made mistakes along the line in the past. We just have to forgive them.
We want to make World Have Your Say as accessible as we possibly can, so we're not short of contact details. You can phone us up now. The number's country code 44 2070 83 72 72. Of course, we're on Facebook and Twitter as well. Our email is worldhaveyoursay@bbc.com, or you can text us from anywhere on country code 44 7786 20 60 80. And we know that some of those contact details aren't the snappiest, but don't worry, they're all at worldhaveyoursay.com. We're looking forward to hearing from you. You're watching World Have Your Say, and as you'd imagine, the most discussed issue around the world today is when President Mubarak should go. He wants to go in September when elections are held in Egypt. There are thousands of people in Tahrir Square who think very differently. Let's go immediately to Hassam, who's joining us on the phone, while you can look at live photos from the square as well. Hassam, tell us what you can see.
Today was a very strong day in terms of the protest here in Tahrir Square, following 2 days of continuous clashes with Mubarak thugs who were sent in on horses, wielding swords and knives in some medieval kind of like scene. A few minutes ago, the people went up in cheers after actually rumors had spread that Mubarak had left, but he hadn't left yet. However, the public prosecutor has already issued an order by which he froze the assets of Rashid Mohammed Rashid, one of the neoliberal gurus and close associates of Gamal Mubarak, and 4 of the assistants of the former notorious interior minister have also been issued an arrest warrant.
Okay, so you're glad that pressure is being applied to Mr. Mubarak's allies within Egypt. But just explain to our viewers all around the world why you can't wait just a few weeks or a few months to make sure that this transition is peaceful.
It's because we do not trust the Mubarak dictatorship. Mubarak has ruled us with torture chambers for 30 years. He has ruled us with false lies and promises. Just because he said that he was going to leave in September does not mean anything. He does not have a shred of credibility, and we want him not just to go, but we want to put him on trial and prosecute him for all the crimes he committed against our people for the past 30 years.
Okay, Sam, thank you very much for speaking to us. We'll say goodbye. Just before the break, we were speaking to Dr. Ibrahim Kamel in Cairo. Many thanks to him. Still with us, Nora, who lives in London but is Egyptian. We also have Yasser El-Shimi, a former employee of the Egyptian foreign ministry who was working in the States. He's with us live from Washington, D.C. And we can bring in Kareem, who's an Egyptian consultant living in Dubai. Kareem, this issue of trust comes up so much when people discuss when the president should go. Why would you trust him to go in September?
I think the main issue here is that there is a lack of trust between the people and the government and President Mubarak himself. So I'm actually concerned why they are so much into having him leave now rather than having guarantees for him to leave in September. And the main issue for the government now...
And it sounds like he's just dropped off, which is a shame. We'll sort that out. But Nora, let's bring you in. Again, why do you trust the president and the vice president to hand over power? Lots of Egyptians are sceptical.
I think he's come out and announced it to the whole world. I think there's American pressure from America and the EU for him to conduct an orderly transition of power. I think it's our only choice at this point. I think we need to trust him, and I think we need to wait for him to change the Constitution. If he steps down now, the question that I've been asking repeatedly and haven't been getting an answer to is, what happens next? Okay, so he'll hop on a plane, leave the country, and he'll be gone. Who takes over? Who ensures that the person that comes in to rule the country will not stay for another 30 years? It's the future of Egypt. And the destiny of Mubarak, or what happens to him and whether or not he's tried, is irrelevant at this point. We should focus and put Egypt at the forefront of our priorities there.
OK, Nora, thanks for that point. Good news is Kareem is back. Kareem, let me read you this message from May, who's emailed us from Alexandria. She says, we need to be civilised in the way that we disagree. Mr Mubarak's an Egyptian citizen who should be treated with dignity and respect. But those protesters in Tahrir Square clearly feel that he's a criminal and should be put on trial. Where do you stand on this?
I agree with the email that was sent to you. I believe multiple things. First, President Mubarak is not that traitor that we should try. I believe that there has been many advancements in the country in the past few years. Yes, there have been lots of corruption, there have been lots of problems, but there is a gray area. We cannot say that he's a perfect leader or he's such a devil leader who has been leading the country into hell for the past few years. Another thing is that I don't see how the current demonstrations can take us forward, or having him leave now take us forward into our demands.
Well,
as previously mentioned by Nora and by Dr. Ibrahim Kamil.
Karim, let's bring in Yasser, who's listening to you, because I'm sure he wants to speak to you. Yasser, what's your point for Karim?
Again, we're back to the credibility issue. Most Egyptians just don't trust President Mubarak when he talks about introducing reforms. I mean, he did buy himself some sympathy with his speech last Tuesday. However, that sympathy was completely dissipated when we saw the armies of thugs on the street trying to intimidate people from joining the protests and attacking the peaceful protesters. This was not exactly the action of somebody who is willing to reform his country. We are also looking at constitutional amendments that are going to be debated by a parliament whose election was completely rigged. We have 97% of the parliamentary representation composed of the ruling National Democratic Party, whose headquarters in most cities have been set on fire, by the way. And we are right now in a very difficult situation. I think that the proposal that was put forward by the Committee of Wise Men, with such people like Ahmed Zouel and Ahmed Kamal Abul Magd and Naguib Sawiris and Fahmi Houedi and Amr Moussa and others, they are basically calling for the president to transfer his presidential authorities to his vice president while establishing a national unity government that would include independent
yes,
people
just so we're clear,
people can trust.
Yes, so sorry for interrupting you. Just so we're clear, would you support that mid-term move if a national unity government was established until September? You would go with that?
I would go with that.
Okay.
I think that, again, that would address the issue of credibility.
Well, those of you watching, do you agree with Yasser that mid-term, that middle ground is the best way of going about things? Or do you agree with people like Hassam in Tahrir Square, who we spoke to, who said the president has to go now? That's what we're discussing live on BBC World News. If you'd like to take part by phoning, texting, tweeting, on the blog, on Facebook, and all other ways as well, all the details are scrolling on the screen as we talk about things. OK, let's bring in a caller now. Enos is an American-Egyptian living in Cairo. Enos, tell us where you are and what your view is on when the president should leave.
Well, I'm at home. I'm obviously stuck at home since I'm not going and protesting. I don't think the president needs to leave now. I think there's a lot of people, as has been dubbed, the silent majority. I don't know if it's a majority, but the fact of it is neither is the Tahrir Square protesters that are continuing to protest. I'm completely for the initial protests and the ideals of the initial protests, which was to make a change and turn this into a true democracy. But they are behaving the same way that they are arguing the government has behaved, where a small group of people yell and raise their voice and ignore everyone else's voices.
And explain to us, Enos, you say that you haven't been protesting. Why haven't you been protesting?
You know, this started off as a movement that we all felt would be something a little bigger than what we had seen before. And, you know, there are people that are activists. I'm not an activist. I believe in democracy, yes. But what it's reached now is not a democracy. You know, a democracy means that everybody's voice counts. And right
but
now,
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Enos, but isn't it a step towards democracy?
A step towards democracy, but at some point it has to start behaving like a democracy. Where
OK, well, that's an interesting point. Let's bring in Yasser, who is strongly for President Mubarak leaving office right away. Yasser, this isn't democratic, is it, for a minority to drive through what happens in a country?
You can't ask a revolution to behave like a democratic government. That we're talking about a situation where you have millions and millions of Egyptians out on the street demanding the rights for freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom to elect their true representatives. And I think that it would be very perhaps disingenuous to claim that these people are behaving in an undemocratic fashion.
Kareem in Dubai, what's your Kareem in Dubai? Come in on this.
By the way, people coming from all different sectors of Egyptian society.
Kareem?
Yeah, but my question for Yasser is, don't you think that this is sort of suppressing the point of view of the others who support President Mubarak? Maybe
no,
they just want him to stay till the end of his term.
Because the Egyptian people so far have not had an opportunity to elect their president. And President Mubarak was not elected freely before. So right now what these people are demanding is a chance for the Egyptian people to express who is their representative, who is the next quote-unquote leader of Egypt. If President Mubarak wants to run again in a free and democratic elections, sure, that is fine, completely fine by me. If Egyptian people decide that they want Mr. Mubarak or one of the old guard in the National Democratic Party, that is absolutely their choice.
Yes,
and we need
Kareem, I'm going to have to
respect
interrupt you because we're coming right up to 12:30, but we can carry on this discussion online. Many thanks to Yasser in Washington, D.C., to Kareem in Dubai, Enos in Cairo, and also to Nora in London. And also thanks to all of you watching for your contributions. I'll speak to you soon.